Hello, everyone. Welcome to Writer's Melon. Today, I have author Rupa Madhavan with us. She's based out of Scotland, and she has written her debut novel. It's called The Nine Dolls. So, Rupa, welcome to Writer's Melon. Tell me more about yourself and your latest psychological thriller.
Yeah. Hi, Priyanka. Thank you for having me here. It's lovely to chat to you. Hi, I'm Rupa Madhavan. I'm the debut author of an award-winning psychological thriller, Nine Dolls, that has recently been published by Joffre Books and Audible. And it won the Joffre Prize for Crime, which is UK's biggest crime prize for underrepresented writers in 2024. And a year later, I have my own book published in September, and I'm delighted to be here.
Yay! So, Rupa, like many of aspiring writers, you're also a project manager, a mom who lives in Edinburgh. And I guess your life also feeds a lot into your writing. And I can clearly see that in the way you have set the book up. So, tell us, did you always plan to write a psychological thriller, or is this also a part of your reading influence growing up? So, tell us a little bit more about how did you go about writing Nine Dolls?
Of course. So, 3 years ago, Priyanka, if I'm telling you the truth, I didn't even know that I wanted to be a writer, right? Let alone writing a psychological thriller. But I've always been an avid reader, right? Growing up, I was bilingual. So I read books of Agatha Christie, Enid Blyton. I grew up with them, as well as the Indian writers like Kalki and quite a few writers, Arundhati Rai and everybody. So I have always been an avid reader, but it was only 3 years ago that potentially just after we came out of COVID, I started attending some of the book events and things like that, that I even vocalized, even to myself, not to others, that I probably would love to be a writer at some point in time. But naturally, at that point in time, I've always been a crime thriller mystery reader, if I'm completely honest, or historic fiction to balance it out. But mostly I have been a crime girl growing up. So it was naturally for me, crime writing was naturally coming up as a reader, moving to writer. That was a natural step for me. But at that point in time, I was reading a lot more psychological thrillers like Gone Girl on the Train, The Girl It, Ruth Ware, Lucy Foley. So naturally, I think that's where my headspace was at that point in time. So started exploring it, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Great. Great. So, Rupa, let's talk about the setting of your book. And I found it very interesting because I think a lot of authors who live in the UK and Scotland really get inspired from the Scottish Highland. And one of your major component or the major character in your novel, I would say, is also the Scottish manor where you set the entire book. It's a huge villa where we have 10 people gathering, and there are couples, there is tension between the couples, there is friendship, there is tension in friendship. So tell me a little bit more about this setting per se, and without giving too much away of the spoilers, also tell us the central core theme of your novel, Nine Dolls.
I will. Thank you. So I'm so delighted that you brought this up because settings for me are very, very important. They are never an afterthought. And as you said, when for psychological thriller, that could, I know I'm biased because Scotland has been my home for 16 years. But personally, I think you don't have to look much far from the Scottish Highlands. It's so hauntingly beautiful, perfect setup. You can bring a storm in. That happens every now and then, anyways. And there's coast. I'm a coastal girl. I grew up in southeast coast of India, Chennai, and then now I live in Edinburgh, which is also southeast coast of Scotland. So I'm a big coastal girl, so I can bring the ocean in, the atmosphere. You can bring a mountain in. There are lakes, so it's so hauntingly beautiful that I knew that I wanted to set my book in a Scottish Highlands. But I was researching different locations, right? So because I know I wanted somewhere remote and I wanted somewhere in Scottish Highlands. So I was researching different locations. And I happened to come across Oban, right? I've been to Oban 15 years ago, but briefly to go over to Isle of Skye. And it wasn't Oban that sold me off to that, right? So there is off the coast of Oban, there is Maiden Island. And if you read the book, it's quite prominently featured in the book. So I came across this Maiden Island, the tiny wee island that's not inhabited, but there is a folklore of the Maiden Island about Wari, the maiden, like she was 14th century, and she fell in love with the knight, and she was a common girl. So there were class distinctions at that point in time, and she was called a witch for falling in love with a knight. And what happened was she had to prove herself that she's not a witch. So to prove herself, her hair was tied to a stone in the Maiden Island, and if she drowns, she's not a witch. But if she manages to free herself up, she's a witch, and she'll be killed in a gruesome way, right? So she'll be burned, drowned, or whatever it is. So either way, she dies, and they made sure of that. And they will tie her hair to the rock, and then she drowns. That's the story of the folklore. And there is a folklore that her spirits haunt the Maiden Island, and nobody lives there. It's a tiny wee island. It's not livable, I will think. But there's also folklore about Wari's spirits haunting the Maiden Island. And once I learned about this small wee folklore, I was sold. So that was my setting, right? And I had to bring Wari's story into that. So Nine Dolls, while it features prominently Navratri, which is an Indian festival, it also features Wari's story in the folklore of the Scottish Maiden Island. So it is a perfect amalgamation of me, right? So I grew up in India. Now Scotland is my home. So it's a combination of the Indian and Scottish culture, which give the unique me into the book. So it's pretty much my lived experience. So a little bit about the book, Nine Dolls. So picture this: a remote Scottish manor house, a friendship reunion to celebrate the Hindu festival of dolls, Navratri, and what should be a joyous 9 nights to celebrate quickly turns dark when the doll starts moving and the secrets start tumbling. And every night brings with it a new secret. The question becomes, which secret is worth killing for? I hope it gives you enough.
Amazing. I could almost sit and listen to you. It felt like I'm hearing the audible version of your book. You did it so great. So I also wanted to talk to you about the craft per se. I mean, of course, your story is great. The setting automatically draws me into reading as a reader. But of course, there is a lot that goes behind building those finished pages, right? So let's talk a little bit about how you balance this external plot or the setting with the internal journey of some of your key characters. I see you just mentioned the perfect amalgamation of the Scottish and the Indian culture, and I see that coming through in the characters, how the women complain about the men's not doing the chores, how they talk about eating idli with their fork and things like that. So tell us, how did you kind of balance this thriller element and making sure that the characters also come to life without being like just shallow pieces of people or character? How did you make sure that you bring that depth in the characters along with the plots?
Yeah, thank you. So usually, in the writing world, we call either plotters or pansters, right? So plotters are ones who do a detailed map of what they're going to write, plan every plot elements and write through. And then on the other end of the spectrum is pansters, who don't have an idea. They have a rough idea of what they want to write about, and then they figure out as they go. So I am a panster, so I don't plot way too much. But having said that, I always start with an idea, a clear idea. So in this case, because it was about Navratri, I already knew it's going to be 9 nights, right? So the story is going to span across the 9 nights, and there are going to be one secret for each of the nights, and the dolls are going to move. That much I knew. But I didn't know what the secrets were going to be. I didn't know who's going to be the killer. I didn't know who's going to be the victim. Nothing at all when I started writing. And it was Leela's voice, main character, one of the 4 main characters who are narrators of the book. Her voice came to me first. And it was so beautifully haunting for me. She's quite superstitious, she's very traditional, she has her belief systems quite strong, and she's not shy about letting that know. And because once I got her voice, that's when it kind of slowly evolved. And then Smita's voice also came quite easily to me. I struggled a little bit with Nancy's and Livy's voice. It wasn't until the second draft that I got their voices correct and mapped and their character nuances done. And that is because I was figuring out them as and when I was writing. So, and I didn't know who was going to be the killer. So I didn't know who's going to be the bad person there. Only after their voices come to me, I kind of said, okay, this person is potentially going to be the killer, and then this person is going to be the victim. So it's their voices. I let their voices guide me rather than the other way around. So I didn't know until I wrote the ending as to who's going to be the killer and who's even going to die, if I'm completely honest. So, no, it was a beautiful journey, and I loved writing from each of the characters' voices. And because I was figuring them out as I went, so their internal conflicts were as important as external conflict because I don't know who they are. So I figured them out through writing. So that's probably why it is already naturally balanced in my writing, because I don't know, I didn't do a lot of character work before. So yeah, no, it just naturally evolved is all I can say. I'm
Amazing.
glad it's worked out.
Amazing. So, I always wanted to understand this essential ingredient. What do you think are some of the essential ingredients of a strong psychological thriller beyond, let's say, a twist or a suspense? What would be your advice to writers who are trying to find their own voice first, and then, let's say, find the voices of their characters? So, how do you approach this?
Yeah. So to be personally in a thriller and any bit, any good story, for me it's all about the characters, right? So if you feel strongly with the character, they don't have to necessarily be likable. So personally, I think we humans come in all shades of gray. So there's no black and white. There's no one extremely good person or extremely bad person. Though, of course, there are serial killers and people like that. But what I need to say is it's a spectrum of characters. So they do have varying shades of gray in them. They don't have to be particularly likable, but they should have a strong voice. They should feel relatable in some ways. Like you did mention about eating idlis with a fork. We've all done that. So you can relate with that elements. And you did mention about complaining about husbands. I think most women, not necessarily Indian women, would relate with that at some point in time. We would have. I think done that. So bringing that relatability into the characters, I think that gives them the life that they need, not making them two-dimensional characters, give them character quirks, give them flaws that you could potentially use, give them voices that are unique enough that you're when I'm writing, because I write in first person, and each chapter is each person's voice, and I'm like, what would Leela do? There's no writer in me that's writing that. So I'm writing as Leela. So that makes it easier for me to write because I write in first person. I'm never writing as myself. I'm only writing as Leela or as Smita, as Nancy and Livy. So when I do that, I think it makes it a little easier. But for writers who are writing for the first time or trying to find their voice, my advice would be lean into yourself, right? So personally for me, 16 years in Scotland, but before that in India. So that gave me my natural fingerprint of my voice. So I lent into that heritage of mine, and I think it came naturally for me. So I think that's all our life experiences, right? They leave marks all over, and the it shapes the writer that we are. The more we lean into it, I think the voice will come naturally.
Amazing. I want to ask you a very personal question. So, authors who write thrillers, crime, murder, the dark things, right? So, does it at some point impact you mentally, emotionally? Because there is like so much positivity, whitewash that we see on the internet. And like you just mentioned, that human beings are like really gray creatures, like nobody is completely black or completely white. How does how has been your experience writing thriller where you intentionally have to see the darkest and the darkest side of a human being. Does it impact you personally? How does it
I,
work?
I'm so glad you asked me this, right? Because as I say, if you come to Scotland or attend any crime writing festivals, you will see all crime writers, and there cannot be a lovelier bunch than they are. They are so nice, so lovely, so supportive. They are the nicest people you could ever find, right? And part of it, I think, is because we take all the darkness that is there in us and we put it in a paper. So that is it. We are getting rid of the darkness in us, and that's like written out into the world and sent out. So there's no darkness left in us. So we only have the lightness and happiness, joy, and supporting each other that comes naturally. You should see some of the crime writing authors. They are the loveliest bunch, and it takes away some of the darkness from our life. It's almost like therapeutic to write the darkness in and leaves lightness within us.
That's a very positive way of looking at it. I almost wonder that if an author has to research so much about the darkness and the crime and has to intentionally look for all the darker side outside as well. Of course, we can take out everything that's inside, but what is there outside is kind of unlimited, right? If you open
Of
the news
course.
feed, you will
Uh,
have infinite scroll of what the crime that's going on, whether it's in your city or globally, or I don't know. So my only worry of trying to become a crime writer or be in this realm of crime writing and read a lot of crime is that will it at some point subconsciously impact me and make me into a negative person? So that's something that I always worry about. That's why I just wanted to understand your point of view. But it looks like you have kind of distanced yourself in a way from the external.
Of course, but it is also a fact that people who are in the entertainment industry, right, like the clowns or Charlie Chaplin, if you look at the life history of some of them, you would naturally find that the people who have been the comic, the person who's always been laughing out and entertaining people, they are the ones who
That
had
is.
to internalize a lot of their depression, right? So they had to internalize a lot of that negative feeling. So they are always positive on the outside. So I think it is, personally, I think it's the opposite, right? If you are so joyful, if you are giving out a lot of romance or comedy outside, internally you are sadder and more depressed. But when you give out a crime thriller or a psychological thriller, because you've projected out all your darkness, you have a lot of joy inside, I feel. So I know my first ever crime was a cozy crime. It was quite funny and quite, it has like punchy comic sense, which I have not published. That's my first book zero, as I would call it. And when I was writing it, I was in a darker place than I was writing Nine Dolls. So personally, I think it's harder to write comedy or romance and still feel happy. But when you write crime or psychological thrillers, you're naturally light. But
You
that's my
made my
experience at
day
least.
and my weekend. You really made my day because I have been overthinking this so much. So thank you for giving me this perspective. And I think the clown and the Charlie Chaplin example was the perfect because
Yeah,
I heard a lot of stand-up comedians who do such great job on the stage, but really going through so much internally. And
exactly.
it's so interesting that you could just flip it. And that's a new perspective, of course. And amazing. Thank you for that.
Thank you. No,
Let's end this with some quick, fun, rapid fire questions. I have brought a couple of them to bring this interview to a lighter note. Writing ritual or a spot? Are you a desk with a view kind of a person or just write anywhere you are?
I wish, Priyanka, I wish at some point in time, maybe. But now, as you have mentioned earlier, I have a full-time job. I'm a mom of two kids. So the house chores, the kids, and all that. So, and full-time work. So I write wherever I can, whenever I can. If I mention some of the places I've written in, I have written in bus stops with the laptop propped on my legs. And I have written in the bus. I'll be like nudging the person next to me with the elbow. And I have written in car parks, cafes, wherever. I drop the kids to a club, sit in the car park, and try and write. So, no, I don't have a specific ritual. I just snatch every minute I can get to write.
So the entire Scottish Highland was really in your mind and not so much in front of you, right?
No, it wasn't. Definitely it wasn't. So I live in the city. So yeah, and Google Maps always helps. And I can look at pictures. So in this day and age, research is very, very easy. Yeah.
Favorite thriller you read in the past years or very recently?
Oh, that is very hard to pick. I read a lot and I love what I read. Quite difficult. Can I say a few authors instead? So, Guest List by Lucy Foley. Lucy Foley is a favorite of mine. Alice Feeney is a favorite of mine. His and hers. I love Frida McFadden. Everybody loves Frida McFadden. The Housemates is my favorite. No, I think quite a few. If I can keep naming them.
Very
I read.
interesting space. Like there's just so much coming up and so much happening also in the crime
Yeah,
drama.
yeah. Recently, I read The Girl in Saleh by Wasim Khan. That's a great thriller. No, I love all the different aspects, and it's quite intriguing to see how different people bring different types of darkness into their characters. No, I love that.
A favorite song that would assign the mood of Nine Dolls. I don't know if you're into music.
Yes and no, but yes, for $9, if I have to choose an Indian music, probably I'll choose I Giri Nandini because of
Ah,
the nature of the dolls, and it's completely about Navratri and the dolls, isn't it? So that's what I would do. And if I have to, I think there are plenty of creepy doll musics that I would choose that'll go well with the $9, yes.
yes. And I think when I was looking through your book, I also saw some of my friends posting pictures of the staircase where, so this is pretty much a ritual in the south of India, right? Like
It
where 9 days of putting dolls, because I think Navratri is celebrated by Indians very differently across different parts of India.
that is it.
Bali, for me, it's the Durga Puja where I eat a lot, wear good clothes and do pandal hopping. Then there would be Gujaratis who would do the Garba. And then there is south of India where there would be a lot of other festivals. And then this particular staircase where you put the miniature dolls, and that happens to inspire you for your book. Quite
Of course.
interesting, Rupa. It has been lovely talking to you, lovely getting to know you, getting to know your perspective. And I look forward to finishing your book. I think that's something that I plan to do this weekend. I'm already halfway through and I'm really, really enjoying it. So thank you so
And I'm so glad. I'll look forward to you finishing it and letting me know if you guessed the ending and what do you think about the
much.
book. So
Yes, let's do that. Thank you so much for being there and wish you all the best.
it's a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you, Priyanka. Have a lovely weekend.